was, I really wish we were teaching this early on in school. I wish we were teaching our children this. I so wish I had access to the neurobiology of rejection early on. Because if I could understand at a fundamental level why it was the way I felt, why it is that I want, that I do what I do, that I fear in the way that I fear, I think I would have made so much more. It would have unlocked so much possibility that I had no access to because I didn't understand the neurobiology of rejection. And so if not just me, I mean, I wish this for humans to understand that.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Amy Wong to share how to live on purpose. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and create harmony to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. Today's quote is from H.L. Hunt. Decide what you want. Decide what you're willing to exchange for it. Establish your priorities and then go to work. I find it ironic that most people don't put much effort or time into deciding what they want, and then they don't realize that there is a price to pay and what that price is. And the question is are you even willing to pay that price? We're going to chat about this today. But first, let's review last week's action step, which was to track your food intake and see what you're really eating. I have to tell you, when you track your money and your food, your eyes will be opened as to what's really going on. It's quite surprising for many people to see. I encourage you to do this. I do both, and it helps me to stay on track. So here's the big question. What do you want from life? For me, it was hard to recognize my gifts and then understand how to do something with them that would allow me to have fun and support my lifestyle. I finally figured it all out. Now it's fun. I don't feel like I'm working. I enjoy what I'm doing. The next part that I had to deal with, and I still do to this day, is my programming. It's so unconscious that I don't realize it. I know I'm getting more conscious about watching my behavior and calling myself out when I see the examples of bad programming. Continually working on updating that. That's what it's all about. And this is going to be our topic for today. And we're going to dig into it deeper. Amy Eliza Wong is a certified executive coach who has devoted more than 20 years to the study and practice of helping others live and lead on purpose. She works with some of the biggest names in tech and offers transformational leadership development and internal communication strategies to executives and teams around the world. She's here to talk about her new book, Living on Purpose, 5 Deliberate Choices to Realize Fulfillment and Joy. Let's meet Amy. Welcome to Richer Soul, Amy Wong. It's great to have you join us.
So good to be here, Rocky. Thank you so much.
And I'm excited to learn from you today. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Well, I have to say, I am extremely blessed because I was born to two parents that are best friends. They absolutely love each other. They're going to be married 50 years now here coming up pretty soon. And there was just so much love in our home, unconditional love. And I honestly, looking back and now having had so many conversations with so many people, like there's no amount of money that just could equate to love like that, being raised in a home with so much love. Now, that was one kind of currency. Another kind of currency is the kind that we make, via work. And my parents have incredible stories. My mom, comes from hardworking parents. They owned a farm. My grandpa was in the military, just really, really hardworking. So my mom had a really strong work ethic. My dad was raised in poverty. He didn't know who his dad was. He really was left to fend for himself. And he developed a really, really strong work ethic. And so my parents, when they met, they were really bootstrapping and really, really determined and very creative. And my parents ended up, they got married young and they bought a bar in their early 20s. And so they had a nightclub, one of the hottest nightclubs in Sacramento. I was raised in a nightclub, which always makes people laugh. And really, it just goes to show just how determined and hardworking they were. And for that reason, right there, they have a lot of beliefs around money. And it's just like scarcity mindset. I think mainly because, where my dad moved from, he's done a lot to overcome that. And he's in a tremendous place now. But I think being raised with so much love and just such a strong work ethic, I had a really strong work ethic. And so I loved to make money and I loved to work hard. And I really learned that money flows freely. And I think I took that on actively because I saw what a scarcity mindset felt like. But I think because of the opportunities available to me and because I was so supported by my parents, it was easy for me to make a different choice and have a different relationship with money.
Where did all that love come from? In the sense that it seems like they made that intentional. I mean, and they were pretty young to begin with, it sounds like, and yet they created that atmosphere. Was it something that they grew up with, or was it just who they were?
That's a great question, Rocky. My mom reflects back and it felt like conditional love, and her parents, my grandparents, did the best they could. They were phenomenal people, but definitely didn't have that sense of unconditional love that my parents have given me and my siblings. My dad also was not raised in an environment where there was free love. I mean, if anything, he was in survival mode most of the time. And I know, in conversations with my dad, he made it really clear to himself. He made a decision really early on. When I have children, they will never, ever, 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 ever feel the way I feel. And so he made a very powerful decision on how and who to be as a result of his experience. And then when my parents got together, they're both very evolved, very wise people and very loving people at heart. And so I think their values really melded well and blossomed.
It's interesting. And I think that is the one thing. Sometimes when people grow up in a certain atmosphere, one of two things happens, right? Either they continue the atmosphere or they radically switch it to say, I didn't like this, so I'm going to make sure that my kid doesn't have to experience what I had to experience. So what was it like growing up in a nightclub?
Well, I didn't know any different. Life was great. I got to play on the stage and sing and play with my Tinker toys during the day and help my mom out. This was much younger. So before the age of, 7 and 8, this was our reality. To me, my friends were adults. It was really, really challenging for me to go to school because I was not used to being around children. And I felt so at home being with other adults, conversations with adults, so that when I had to go into kindergarten, I felt so out of place and so uncomfortable because I just didn't know how to relate to that kind of energy. And it took, and I honestly, I think that set me on a path to feel really insecure for quite a long time. And it was exactly, and I'm so blessed and I'm so grateful for that, because it was exactly having to work through that insecurity that allows me to do the work that I do. Right. And so I really see it as being quite purposeful that all of this happened the way that it did. Everything's always on purpose in my book, right? Literally and figuratively, but it was lovely.
That's interesting, though, because I would assume that you're walking into kindergarten and you can have conversations and do things. It's just interesting that it led to insecurity instead of wondering, why is everyone else kind of so childish?
A lot of what guides my work, I have a fascination with our neurobiology, and particularly as it pertains to how we're social beings and how we're hardwired for connection, and therefore hardwired to avoid judgment and rejection equally. And so what I can make sense of is, in these young years, we're hardwired for acceptance, belonging, and approval, because that's life. Rejection to the brain is death. We don't talk about that, but it's true. All of us on all levels, we're trying to avoid rejection. Well, what does that mean? We're trying to avoid not being included. We're trying to avoid not being judged. And so, to a young child who doesn't have the ability to really understand the complexities of life and discern fact from fiction and really look at things logically in the way that an adult would, to me, it makes sense that, oh my gosh, my primal directive is to just feel like I belong. And that's life, and that's thriving, and that's survival. So to enter into an environment that felt super unfamiliar and not understand that just not to feel like I fit in, that was highly triggering. It's like, I don't belong here. I don't know how this works. I don't do, yeah. And so that's going to still, I think that's going to trigger a lot of doubt, self-doubt, insecurity.
It's funny because we talk to parents about school, and sometimes it comes up with homeschooling and all, and they're like, well, how are kids going to get socialized? And I'm like, well, I don't know about you, but if I wanted to socialize a 7-year-old, I wouldn't want to put them in the room with another 7-year-old, maybe a 12-year-old or an 18-year-old. Too many people are raising kids. They're not raising adults. And I think it shows. You were so used to just being around adults, you step up to a whole nother level. And we all do that in life because we are the average of the 5 people we're around. And too often we're putting ourselves in the wrong 5 people.
That's right.
So you work through anxiety, you finish school. What happens next?
Yeah. So, what happened was, I was so crippled with anxiety in my, adolescence. And I always felt like I was one step behind the curve. And over high school, I really tapped into my love of math. So I started piano when I was 4 years old. So I was a musician. So I was playing piano all the time. And I really tapped into my love of math, and it just took off. And I became so passionate and obsessed about mathematics that I'm like, I can't get enough of this, math and music. And so that passion and that, I want to say, obsession led me to go to UC Berkeley. I studied mathematics there. And it was what I started to tap into, which I have words for now, I didn't have words back then, was that I was really following the feeling. I wasn't following this strategy, because if I was following a strategy, I would have ended up doing what my dad does. My dad is in wealth management. He's been working for Morgan Stanley now for over 30 years. And so, that would have made sense. I would have probably followed something like that. But I didn't do necessarily what sounded like a great idea. I just did what felt amazing. And so that was studying math. And so as I did, and people are like, oh, are you going to become a math teacher? Are you going to become a math professor? I'm like, no, I'm just going to study this and see where this goes. And so I kept what I was really good at doing, and I didn't realize it, but I was following my inspiration, what felt right. And that led me to an internship with Sun Microsystems when I was 17, turning 18 years old. So I was still at Cal. And that really started the trajectory of my career. So I started working when I was 18 years old in tech. If you remember back in the day, Sun Microsystems, it was big. And today it's the Facebook campus. And back then it was the Sun campus. And it was amazing. And that started my career. So by the time I graduated, when I was 21, I'd been there for a couple of years. And so I was really well established. And that's when my professional life, it really started to take off when I was 18, because it wasn't just Sun. I was teaching math. I was teaching math at Cal. I was doing multiple things, getting all these experiences. But by the time I graduated, it just took off because I'd been there and it was established.
That's impressive that you were able to get in at that young of an age and to have those opportunities. And it's funny you say that. I didn't realize what I was good at, and I didn't realize those. And I think for many people, that's truly true because it just seems so natural to us. You're like, everyone must know math. Why is this so hard? Right. What is so special about this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet for many people, they do.
Right. What I was tapping into was the experience of flow. And I have words for it now, but I didn't know it back then. I was drawn to music and I was drawn to math because I would enter into these, I don't want to say altered states of consciousness, but states in which, the most amazing ideas and possibilities would emerge in loss of time. And it was truly life-giving. And it opened up so much of my purview to what was possible.
How do you tap into flow?
Oh my gosh, there's so much to say about that, Rocky. Well, I think, wow, we could have such a big conversation about this. I'll start by saying it first starts with letting go of a lot of the resistance that we're holding in kind of our intellect. There's a lot of resistance that and when I say resistance, it can be the inner dialogue. It could be I don't know if I can do this, or it's kind of this running commentary, the resistance that we are sustaining about things, assessments and analysis about things. It's really quieting, learning to quiet that inner mind to just be present with the task at hand. That's the first thing. And then the second is allowing your space to not get distracted. And what a luxury is that these days when we're constantly bombarded by distraction, especially in this attention economy, right? So I think that at this day and age, it's becoming harder and harder to achieve states of flow just because we're in an attention economy. But it takes lessening the inner dialogue and lessening the outer stimulus.
Turning off stimulus and getting quiet. And then once you're quiet, turning off the chatter. Mm-hmm. Those are two very difficult things to do. Yeah.
And then you also have to look at the subject. There has to be a genuine curiosity. There has to be a genuine passion. There has to be something in the object of attention at hand that really lights you up. That's either interesting or, life-giving. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, when you were at the younger ages, did anyone look at you and say, you can't do math because you were a girl?
Never had that. No, okay. Fortunately, I feel very blessed that I wasn't met with that kind of discrimination. No.
Because I know that happens a lot. And that's why I was just wondering if you ever had to deal with that. So you have this early success, you're working for Sun, and then what happens? So I'm a hyperachiever, right? So I'm working and I'm loving it and I'm successful and I'm raising the ranks. And by the time I'm 24, I'm traveling the world. I'm doing amazing things. I'm learning a ton. I truly feel like I'm on top of the world. And that was the age I met my husband. And he's a restaurateur in San Francisco. We very quickly, he's so sweet about it. He's like, the moment I saw you, I knew you were my wife. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's hilarious. And, literally within 2 months of meeting, he
he had proposed. Like it was a quick sort of engagement. We'd now been married over 16 years, which is great. But, he's very successful and established. I had this amazing career and I loved it. But my identity was so wrapped up in my career because here I'm this hyperachiever. And it was my life. It's like, this is what I am. I'm a career woman. This is my life. Son is my life. And it was after we had our first child, who's now 14, Aiden, that I had a complete breakthrough moment. But it really started with a breakdown. And what I have to mention is that throughout all of this, from a very young age, I've been very, very fascinated with all things consciousness, spirituality. So in the same way that I'm very passionate about math and music, I'm also passionate about consciousness and spiritual traditions, namely the Eastern ones. And so I remember I had come across Thich Nhat Hanh when I was in 5th grade, and I was reading Buddhist texts, in high school, and went off on meditation retreats. So there's been this part to me that's been very, very open and very curious and I'd say passionate about just the bigger questions about life. Who are we? Why are we here? What does it mean to thrive? And so when Aiden entered into the scene, everything I thought I knew was just shaken to the core because I was really presented the question, who am I? Because I now realized I am not my job. And I can't go back when I've got this amazing little being because that's not what I'm here to do. But yet I'm not here to be a full-time mom, but yet I'm not here. And so I really went through this breakdown where I had to identify who I am. And that was such a weird question because I thought I knew who I was. And so the only way to describe this, Rocky, was that I had a divine download. It was in the most raw moment of surrender in this period of being really low, even though I had every reason to be happy, amazing life, amazing husband, successful in all ways. And yet I am feeling so low that in this moment of surrender, I threw my hands to the side. Aiden's just an infant. And I look up to the ceiling and I literally say out loud, I give up. You show me the way. And here's the funny thing. I don't know who I was talking to because I don't pray like that. Like who it was a force within me I can't describe. But here's what's so powerful and amazing. The moment I asked that, it was immediately answered. Boom. And that question was answered in a way that it reverberated through every bit of my cells. And the answer was, Amy, you're going about it all wrong. It's not about figuring it out. It's about feeling it out. And that wisdom, that truth, those weren't words that I understood. It was a truth that just completely became embodied. And it was exactly that instant that my life changed in a moment. And I went from living on accident to living on purpose. And I went from a human reaching for spirituality to a spiritual being reaching to humanity. And it happened in an instant. And really what that pivot moment is what completely changed my professional trajectory. And it's the reason I do the work I do today. And it was truly, truly, truly profound. And I think a lot of people have the opportunity to have that wake up moment of like, oh my goodness, who am I? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Is this the life I was meant to lead? And I think a lot of us don't heed the call.
I was going to ask, do most people know the answer to that question?
Am I living the life I'm meant to lead? Yeah. They do in their heart because it's either yes or it's, oh gosh, this question, right? Like, oh, and it just hits them in this place like, oh, I'm not being honest.
It seems even before that, though, you were following your feelings because you were going in to do math because that's what you did. Right. And you didn't do it with a purpose. You just did it to enjoy it.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I continued to follow my feelings to a certain point. But really what I talk a lot about, and this comes up a lot in my coaching conversations, starting at a really early age, we are trained to do what we're told, to get good grades, to make our parents happy, to essentially get into a good college so we can get a good job, so we can make lots of money so that then we can be happy, right? And we all become conditioned to what I call the formula. This is what we need to be doing. And we don't recognize that, wait, why am I doing this? Like what? And what we don't see is that everything we want, and this is what I talk a lot about, everything we want, everything we think we want, whether it's more money, whether it's to retire, whether it's to start your own business, whether it's a new relationship, it's actually not for the thing. It's not for the money. What we want is the feeling we think we would have as a result of the thing. So really what we're after is a feeling. And so what happened for me was that I was good at following my feeling until I enter into that classic period where, oh, here's my professional career. Now I'm following the thought. Like, here's the strategy. Keep getting promoted. Keep doing the thing. Because then you'll be happy. And I think in my core, I knew that was not the path to true happiness. I didn't have words for it. And I needed that wake up call that Aiden provided.
You're not going to be happy if you're not happy on the journey.
That's right.
Basically what it comes down to.
That's right.
So we're here to talk about your book. What inspired you to write the book, Living on Purpose, 5 Deliberate Choices to Realize Fulfillment and Joy?
Yeah. So I started my practice. So part of this big pivot for me was becoming a coach. I didn't know that that's what I was going to end up doing. But what happened was very shortly after that big wake up call, I committed to following the feeling, regardless of how logical or illogical my impulses and my inspiration was. And so very quickly, all of a sudden, it became really clear that, oh my goodness, I must get my master's in transpersonal psychology. I have to do this. And it's like, my husband's like, what are you going to do with that? I'm like, I don't know, but I have to study it. This is fascinating. And so by following the feeling, coaching had found me in about 2010. And very quickly, I took that path. And so I've been doing this for over a decade. Over the many, many conversations I was having, I was starting to discern themes about how it is that we're holding ourselves back, what it is that's getting in our way from thriving, and how it's not that hard. It just takes some simple perceptual shifts. So in around 2014, I knew exactly what this book needed to be, but I also knew I wasn't ready to write it because I was still in the process of gathering information, gathering research. So as my coaching started to progress and evolve, I naturally started coaching leaders, and because I've been in the tech space. So now I've been an executive coach for a while now. So I mainly work with leaders and with teams and largely in tech. So the big tech companies, LinkedIn, Salesforce, and Roku. And as over the past, I'd say around 2017, it was really becoming clear to me, oh my gosh, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how successful you are. We are all riddled with suffering, self-suffering, and these self-imposed limitations. And I was contrasting a lot of the conversations that I was having with these leaders, very, very successful, top of their game, with a lot of the conversations I was having in the early parts of my coaching career, where there's this false idea, this premise where, well, when you finally make it, then you're going to be free. And so here I'm dealing with all these people that have quote unquote made it, and they're not at all free. And so it was around, 2017, I'm thinking, I have to write this book just to show people it doesn't matter how successful you are and where you are in your career. We can all take on these habits of self-sabotage, and to break free, it's not about attaining the next thing. It's not about getting more money. It's not about changing the conditions of your life. It's about making these mental shifts. And so that was a really big reason I wanted to write the book. Also, too, it was because a lot of my clients were like, is there a book on what we're doing? And I'm like, no, there's not. So the book really was an answer to where's the book I can follow on with, with our work. And so that was a big reason why I wrote the book. But here's the cool thing. The moment my feeling led me to become immersed in the neuroscience of communication, and namely trust. I got certified in conversational intelligence, which truly enthralls me. All things neuroscience of trust. And this is a huge part of my coaching work. is focusing in on this medium of communication because this is where everything happens. I'm totally immersed in it. I'm loving it. I'm firing on all cylinders. And let me tell you, Rocky, the moment I learned about the neuroscience of rejection, that was when everything that I had been studying, all of these different lines of fascination, curiosities, and passion that made up my work, all of a sudden clicked. And everything that I had been doing now made sense. And that was the final piece that allowed me to put the whole package together. And so it was around 2019 that I'm like, okay, this book needs to be written. And then boom, that's essentially, it was like, we're going to do this. And it took some time, but here it is.
What is conversational intelligence?
So, we have IQ, right? And then there's EQ, which most people are familiar with. So EQ being the intelligence quotient, what's our ability to understand and to know our own motions and others. There's a field of CIQ, which is how intelligent are we in our ability to converse, to communicate, to make things happen? What are we doing that's either allowing us to come together, open up, and come up with generative ideas, or what's happening in our communications that's causing us to protect, to shut down, withhold, right? So it's either lean in or lean away. And conversational intelligence is it's a framework that combines the worlds of neuroscience, leadership, anthropology, psychology, to understand what it takes to thrive, to connect, to navigate, to co-create with others in a really productive way through this medium of communication. So it's a little, do you need IQ? It helps. Do you need EQ? Yes, you do need EQ. But CIQ really is a bit of it goes beyond both IQ and EQ.
That's a new term for me. I'll have to go study and learn about it.
Yeah. I highly recommend the book, Conversational Intelligence. It's an eye-opener for sure. Judith Glaser, the founder of the field, she is tremendous and she has done tremendous work. Sadly, she passed from cancer in 2018, but all the people involved in the field are still moving it forward.
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. And I've heard of something that's titled nonviolent communication, which when I first heard of that, I was like, it's a bad label for what it is.
Agreed.
Is that the same concept or different?
In its essence, I would say yes.
Okay.
Because the idea here, we're hardwired to be in connection. Mm-hmm. We don't create in a vacuum. Everything is happening in this medium of communication. So what do we need to be doing in order to be optimally connected, collaborative, innovative? And that takes really the tenets of what nonviolent communication is. It's really, can we partner here instead of need to protect in this interaction?
And that makes a lot of sense. It's something else I've heard of is perception language. And it's just the way you speak. Instead of telling everyone what to do, it's kind of speaking with a bit more openness and being able to hear. So what is the neuroscience of rejection?
Oh, this is such a good one. And here's another reason I wrote the book, because I feel like we all need to know this. And if we were learning this as kids, oh my gosh, I feel like we'd all be a much more compassionate bunch as humans if we understood what's really going on under the hood. So here it is. So as humans, when we're born hardwired to survive. So the survival brain is really the thing that's online when we're born, the primitive survival brain. The prefrontal cortex, this part right here in the front part of my forehead, this doesn't start developing until adolescence, and it's not fully formed until your mid-20s. Okay, and that's just what it means to be human. Fine. But think about this for a second. When you're born as a human, number one, you're born robotically hardwired to stay alive. That's fact number one. Fact number two, as a human, you are entirely dependent on your caregiver for the first couple of years of life, which is unlike a lot of these, like for a long time, which is unlike a lot of, mammals. A horse, as soon as it's born, can immediately go run. Infant, utterly dependent on the caregiver for the first couple of years of life. Humans. So think about this for a second. When you've got those two facts together, hardwired to survive, need caregiver to survive, think about what that wiring then is for a brain. The moment that child is born, that infant is born, the brain gets that life is not necessarily food, water, shelter. That will follow if caregiver buys in. So therefore, death to the human brain is rejection. And what's so fascinating about this is that rejection as an experience literally registers in what's called the pain matrix as physical pain in the brain, which is unlike many of the other emotional experiences we have. So for example, if you stub your toe, pain matrix, ow, right? You cut your arm off, pain matrix, ow. You get turned down for a job offer, pain matrix, which is like crazy. And so on all levels, we're trying to do what we can to avoid that sense of pain because it maps to something very unwanted. So on conscious levels and more so non-conscious levels, where it really determines, this neuroscience of rejection determines so much of how we perceive and how we navigate.
I just finished reading a book a little bit ago about attachment and psychology. And a lot of that was along those lines of how babies and their caregiver attach and then how that creates their attitudes in life. And we started with the thing, you had loving parents. What happens when your caregiver doesn't respond? Or the other half of that is what happens when your caregiver is frustrated with life because, they're stuck in COVID. They've got 3 kids at home. They're trying to pay bills and the kid's screaming as a baby. And and then there's a formula shortage. So what does that caregiver then reflect back to that baby? And how does that create that whole?
This is such a big conversation. Such a big conversation. How attachment styles really influence our personality development. And, for me, and what's important to me and in my work and what I focus on a lot in the book is it's exactly these experiences we have in our young years where we experience perceived rejection that actually are the moments we form self-limiting beliefs. And those self-limiting beliefs are the lenses we look through for the rest of our life that really determine how we show up, the survival mechanisms we take on, the fears that we have, the desires that we have, our motivations, so much, but it all really stems from these experiences in early life. Oh my goodness, Rocky, there's so much to say about this. I'll tell you, I'm going to plug a dear friend of mine. She became a dear friend because she wrote this book. So if attachment styles and this is interesting to anyone and how it influences who we are and just what to know about it, what we're talking about here, the book is called Strange Situation. And Bethany Saltman, she wrote the book, and this book was rated the #1 science book of 2020. So this came out in COVID. And interestingly, I found it in a book write-up in New Scientist, the magazine, which I enjoy reading. I got the book and it was a page turner. And so since then I've reached out to Bethany. She's become a good friend. But for anyone that's interested about this, highly recommend the book Strange Situation by Bethany Saltman, because it's so illuminating in how it is that we, our early experiences determine how we show up.
I always wonder, have we forgot how to live? In the sense that 500, 1,000, 2,000 years ago, did we understand all of these types of things? And then through modern society, did we lose the concepts of connection and how to Maybe not, because I guess in the old days, you know, if your dad was a farmer, you were a farmer. If your dad was a blacksmith, you became. I'm just wondering how much as humans we're evolving or how much we've lost through that.
I think both can be true, that at the same time that we're both evolving in certain ways and we're losing connection in other ways. And I think right now, given where we are as a people and the technological advances and the rate at which technology is evolving, you know, we all know we're in what's called the attention economy. And so the currency right now is our attention. And so therefore, everything we're interfacing with is something that's built to vie for our attention. And so as we are being bombarded with so much stimulus, naturally our attention and our brain structures are changing in order to survive that onslaught. And as a result, we're becoming very passive in living our life. And so I like how you said, did we forget how to live? I say it's like we're really entering into living life on autopilot, and we're passively engaging in life, and we're forgetting, we're kind of falling asleep at the wheel here because of just all of the stimulus that's happening. And so I think while we're evolving with all of this amazing research about what's true for humans and what's true for the world and technology, I think we're also going through this experience where we're all kind of falling asleep as a result of just so much. Yeah.
It's hard to process it all.
Mm-hmm. It's impossible to process it all. So what do? We shut off, right? We shut down, numb it out. Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because you are in the tech space and they are the number one people who are driving the attention economy. That's how they get paid, essentially. And they spend billions on getting your attention and keeping your attention and manipulating us.
That's exactly right. And that to me is when we enter into this state of being somewhat passive. That's living by default. And that is a state of being in which we are meeting each of our moments where we're kind of making default choices. We're not actively choosing. And so to wake up and to be on purpose means to harness our moments and actively choose to respond instead of react to the stimulus at hand. And that's really where the deliciousness of life resides.
That makes a lot of sense. One of the things that I've heard you say, and we've kind of touched about it, but for a lot of people, life looks good on paper, but not so much in reality. I guess people feel a bit, I don't know, is it hollow is the right word? Why is that? This
comes up all the time. Because going back to what we were talking about earlier, early on, we learn to navigate from a strategy because someone has said, oh, this is a good idea. So do this because this is what you're supposed to do. This is this is what's right. This is what's going to ultimately bring you happiness. And so very early on, we learn to navigate, to follow the formula. Okay, do what I'm told to get the good grades. And you do the thing and you get the accomplishment and you get the accomplishment. And so as we continue to accumulate these accomplishments, like, hey, well, okay, I'm doing the thing, but I'm missing something. And really, and what we're all missing is essentially the ultimate map, which is the feeling. Because like I said earlier, everything we want is because of a feeling. We think it's going to make us feel a certain way, but we never think about it that way. We never ask ourselves, what do we want to feel? What do we ask? What do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? What are your goals? We're not asking, what do you want to feel? But that is truly the most important question because everything we want is because of a feeling. So the moment you bring that awareness, the ultimate map, like what's everything I'm doing? What is it all mapping to? Oh, it's this feeling. Okay, so the moment that's illuminated, now all of a sudden you can say like, okay, well, is what I'm up to actually, is it mapping to that? And most often in cases, it's not, especially for the folks that have life that like looks great on paper. It's like, well, it looks great on paper, but do I have the freedom that I want? Do I have the sense of purpose that I want? Oh, no, actually. And so we have to bring this desired feeling state, awareness around what is it that I want to feel in order to really complete the whole story here.
So I struggle with this one a little, right? Because there's people who, why'd you do that? Because I felt like it, but that was really stupid. Right? How do we get this? I'm not going to use the word balance because we don't like this word, but how do we kind of bring these two in alignment where, okay, I'm going to follow the feelings, but I also need to be somewhat rational? Is that the right word?
Yeah, no, I love that you bring this up because, there's a big difference in our impulses and our inspiration. So when we are fully awake and we're really listening for inspiration, we are really clear about what the ultimate end goal is. This is about impact. This is about love. This is about freedom. This is about making the world, whatever it might be. And that feeling of inspiration is going to feel very different than an impulse that comes from being asleep because I'm trying to numb, sedate, or control my emotional reality because I'm dealing with too much stuff on my plate. And so that, because I felt like it, that's usually a cop-out. That's usually a survival mechanism. And so in part of getting good about learning to feel it out, we have to feel through the difference between when am I really listening for and feeling for inspiration versus when am I really kidding myself here? And I'm trying to just zone out and survive. And it's really the difference between a choice to thrive versus a choice to survive. And it requires honesty. We have to be really honest with ourselves.
So then why do we make choices that are in direct opposition to what we really want?
Fear. 100% fear. It always comes down to fear.
How do we get over the fear?
Well, first you have to wake up to what kind of fear we have, right? And so fear, there's so many reasons why we all sustain fear. It's just a very normal, very natural, very human thing to have fear, right? Fear of uncertainty, fear of threats, fear of danger. But unless we actually fully look at, like, well, what is it that I'm actually really afraid of? If we're not really looking and asking that question, well, what is it that I'm really afraid of? We're going to be living by default. We're going to be reacting to stimulus. We're going to be making choices that don't actually serve us because we're just replaying the pattern. We're reacting. It's an act that we deploy. And so it's unexamined fear that really keeps us in these cycles of survival mechanisms, making choices that don't really serve us.
That's another thing they don't teach in school, how to overcome fear, right?
Right.
They instill fear.
Yeah, that is true. And and then they use fear to motivate versus really teaching, like, what is this experience? What's underneath this? How do we meet it with full awareness? How do we work with it to move forward? Yeah.
So in the title of your book, you say there are 5 deliberate choices. What are these 5 deliberate choices? Yeah.
They're really perceptual shifts. And you have to choose to make these perceptual shifts. And what I found is that when you make these choices, these perceptual shifts, we really unlock our ability to thrive, to thrive with what is and release ourselves from this idea that if I just get the next big thing, I'll finally be happy. Really. So they're perceptual shifts. So the first one I've been talking about, which is to feel it out, not figure it out. And why is this important? Because we have to bring into awareness, why am I doing what am I doing? Why I'm doing? What is it about? It's because it's all for a feeling. So we've got to bring that into awareness. So that's the first tenet, the first choice, to feel it out. Don't figure it out, because that is the path of least resistance to most abundance. The second choice, and this is one of my favorite ones, is there is no way things or you should be, period. So part of unlocking our ability to thrive is to wake up to this word and the force of should. There's a big conversation. There's so much to say about this. The presence of should in our life. And so in the book, I really break it down because it's fascinating to me how most of us hold ourselves underwater to this word, not really recognizing what the heck this is, what it's implying, why do we do this, and how it's really holding us back. So the second choice, there is no way things should be. The third, now this is one of the biggest choices people have to make, and it is a choice. But the third choice is to choose to know that it's always working out for you. And so this is an active choice, because some people are like, well, it's not working out for me. Look at this. Look what happened here. Look at that. Look at how could this be working out for me? And so what this choice is about is to really understand, look, the nature of existence, here we are on this plane of existence. The nature of existence is born out of duality. We cannot have up without down. We cannot have birth without death. We cannot have joy without sadness. It's just live in a realm of duality. And so growth doesn't purely happen in the light. In fact, we grow in some of the darkest times. And so in the same way we would plant a seed in dark, stinky soil, right? We need that dark, stinky soil in order for it to emerge. And so to really hold both the positive and the painful or the dark experiences and say, you know what, actually both serve me. And so that's a really big, so that this choice is a big, beautiful one. And there's a lot to that one. So third is it's always working out for you. The fourth is you are already complete. Choose to know that you are already complete. That's a big unlock. And the fifth is a massive distinction in how we perceive, which makes a big difference in being able to take that on, that you're already complete, is to choose to know, not believe your worth. And so what does it mean to know? What does it mean to believe? Well, when I dive into the book, it's to know something really is freedom, because now we don't need to prove it. So all of those together really create a roadmap for true thriving. Each one of these choices you can take on their own, and it makes a huge difference. But in totality, there's something pretty magical about an unlock when you take on all five, and they all kind of work together.
Is there one that people especially struggle with?
It's a great question. And I would say there's usually one that's going to be a bit more challenging than the others, but probably due to how they were raised, the attachment styles to the beliefs that they have held. But I wouldn't say universally, oh, this is the hardest one for people to really take on.
So it sounds like it's just overcoming yourself, right? You've got to go through your programming and start to rewrite your code. We're coming back to technology.
Yeah, it's looking at the operating system. That's exactly right. I mean, we are all getting in our own way. And this book is a roadmap on how to get out of your own way. That's it.
It's always the reflection in the mirror that's the problem.
You know what? You're right, Rocky. You're right. It's well, actually, and this is how I speak about it. It always comes back to the relationship we have with ourselves. That relationship forms the primary lens that you look out through to the world, that imbues everything with meaning, that then will give rise to how you perceive and how you interpret, which will then give rise to your feelings and your thoughts, your words and your actions. And so that relationship with self that really creates that primary lens determines everything.
Is there anything you wanted to share today but didn't get a chance to?
That's a great question. I'm loving this conversation. I'm like, God, we're hitting all the good stuff here. You know, I would say if there's anything that's worth saying, people think that getting to this place of freedom and joy and fulfillment and meaning takes a lot of hard work. And this is in that paradigm of proving and needing to achieve and get the next big thing. Yeah, it would be easy to assume it takes a lot of work and but the thing I would say is that to really thrive, it's not nearly as hard as we make it out to be. It's simple perceptual shifts that you have to choose to take on. And that choice, beautifully, is up to you. You get to choose. You get to choose. Yeah.
We're holding ourselves back.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Speaking of taking action, we like to encourage people to take action every week. What is one action step people could take to move their lives forward this week?
Well, to just follow along with what we're saying here, to build some cohesion and congruency to the conversation, I would say, as you go forth and you're navigating your days and you've got your to-do lists and you're thinking about what you're trying to do and what you're up to, one of the most nourishing questions we can start to bring into our inner dialogue is, well, what do I want to feel? What do I want to feel? And, I do a lot of public speaking coaching, a lot of communication coaching, and something that can be super helpful. Like, this is a perfect way of bringing it to life, right? Something that be super helpful is, as you're putting that presentation together, as you are putting that agenda together for the meeting that you're going to facilitate, as you are creating that keynote for whatever it might be, we are normally asking, well, what is it that I want to say? Right? Which is equivalent to, well, what is it that I want to do as we navigate our life? So instead of just asking, what is it that I want to say? What do I want them to know? A really powerful question is to start to ask, well, what do I want them to feel? What do I want them to feel? And shining a light of awareness on that really unlocks a lot in how we see what is possible. So moving forward, I say, is you're equally asking, what do I want to do today? What do I want to achieve? Start asking yourself also this question, well, what do I want to feel today? And see how your inspiration, your insights, your impulses might shift a little bit as a result of that awareness.
It's funny. I've always heard this. People don't remember what you said. They remember how you made you feel.
That's exactly right. Yes. That's what we're communicating. That's what we're transmitting constantly from one another. We're not communicating words. We're transmitting a feeling. And I say that in coaching. It's your job isn't to get people to hear what you say. It's to get them to feel what you mean. So yeah. So let's get clear on what we want to feel.
How do you get feeling across like that?
You have to feel it first. First, it takes clarity, right? And then, so it's like, if I want you to feel inspired, or if I want you to feel excited, then I have to be clear about that first, right? It's not just what do I want to transmit here? What's on my agenda? What do you need to know? It's like, well, what do I want you to feel as a result of this? Okay, well, it's clarity. Oh, it's excitement, or whatever it might be. First, you got to get clear. And then the second is to feel it. You got to feel it too. Because as we're communicating, if I'm feeling it, you're going to feel it. But if I'm just spitting out words, you're not going to feel it. And so one of the most powerful things we can do is to feel it ourselves first.
That makes a lot of sense. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Constantly being in a state of awe and gratitude, to always see what is right instead of what's wrong, and to just be so thrilled with just the abundance I see around me. It's a state of being.
We live in amazing times.
We sure do. We sure do.
And I think I was just reading something in the last day or two, and there's like, there isn't anywhere else in the universe that we have found life yet. So the fact that we're here with life is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
This one's a tough one for me to answer, because I really see the purposefulness in everything that I've experienced to get me to this point. So I'm like, do I really want to know that earlier? I'm not sure. But going back, go ahead. Yeah.
And it's not so much that you needed to know it. It's like helping other people to say,
oh yeah,
this was kind of my thing that I figured out.
I see. Well, you know what? I'm going to go back to something I referenced, which was, I really wish we were teaching this early on in school. I wish we were teaching our children this. I so wish I had access to the neurobiology of rejection early on. Because if I could understand at a fundamental level why it was the way I felt, why it is that I want, that I do what I do, that I fear in the way that I fear, I think I would have made so much more. It would have unlocked so much possibility that I had no access to, because I didn't understand the neurobiology of rejection. And so if not just me, I wish this for humans to understand that.
It's fine. When our kids were little, I remember we just had little parent groups and we'd get together and read a book. And one of the things that came out of that was at the end of every day, you need to fill your kid's emotional tank. And so one of the things we always did was spend an inordinate amount of time putting them to bed, because that was the time you could essentially feel safe and loved, right?
Yeah.
And by doing that, you filled their tank so that throughout the day they could go fly. And it seems to have worked.
Yes, that's beautiful. Yeah.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Got a couple here. So I'm trying to think, what is the right one for 18? Well, it's something I find myself telling my 14-year-old quite a bit. And I think it absolutely is just as important at 18, if maybe not more so. But what we choose to focus on, how we choose to focus, determines everything about our reality. What are we saying to ourselves? What are we saying about ourselves? What are we saying about what's possible? What we focus on, we live into. So be more discerning about the inner dialogue, about the narrative, about how you talk about what's true, because that you're going to walk right into it.
And that is so true. And especially at a young age, we think we figured out the world, and sometimes we aren't open to what's out there.
That's right. That's right.
If people would like to learn more about you in the book, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, thanks, Rocky. So my website is alwaysonpurpose.com. So I've got a lot there, what I'm up to and what I do in the world. And, I'm not too much on social media because I like to stay in a state of flow, and social media keeps us from flow. and so, but I do really like LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn and I make great connections. So if you want to find me on LinkedIn, I'm Amy Eliza Wong. That's my handle. And my book, which it's available where all books are sold. The easiest way to get it is Amazon at the moment. So you could just Living on Purpose, 5 Deliberate Choices to Realize Fulfillment and Joy.
And we'll link to the website. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Rocky.
Do you do what you're supposed to do? Or do you do what you love that lights you up and puts you in the flow? It's not easy to find this place. I know for me it was hard because I was looking in all the wrong places, thinking I knew what the answer was, but it wasn't. We've talked about how money and success are not fulfilling. Let's make no mistake about it. They are very nice, and they do provide the freedom to be able to do what you want and what Amy talked about. But it's not the ultimate solution. This week's action step was, what do I want to feel? That's really what it comes down to. How do I feel and how do I want to feel? And then what do I need to change to make that possible? Sounds so simple, but it's not so easy. Sometimes we have to focus. And that's what we're going to talk about next week with Ted Bradshaw. We're talking about stop chasing squirrels, or all those shiny objects that we see out there. By the way, do you know someone who could appreciate today's episode? Would you do me a favor and share it with them? I would appreciate it. Thank you. And thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.